Hey, it's Marjory. It's time for the Off Grid with Marjory on Sunday thing. So, yeah, I had teased about this a little bit earlier during the week, and there are some events coming up that are, I don't know, disturbing, potentially disturbing. I mean, things are stirring, right? Actually, more and more protests. Yesterday, believe it or not, I was in a protest downtown in Puerto Rico here in Rincon. The mayor, absolutely corrupt, absolutely corrupt. I spent 3 years going into the alcaldía, which is the town hall there, and tried to get a community garden going and on different plots of public land here in the community. And finally, I mean, I was just going in there every week and write up proposals, getting signatures, getting businesses on board, having designs, everything you can do, right, to make something like that happen. And then finally, at the end of 3 years, I think they just finally wanted to get rid of me. And they sat me down and said, look, this land that we have is too expensive. It's too valuable. We can't, there was a 5 acre tract I wanted to develop. And they said, no, we're not going to give it to Walgreens, but, it'd be something like that. There's a lot of money involved there. And I'm like, oh, so there's a lot more money in a Walgreens, leasing that land out or selling that land to Walgreens rather than feeding 300 families in the community, having really meaningful work and a place for elders to go hang out, having children's programs that are out in nature teaching them useful skills. Yeah, okay, I get it. I finally got it. I'm a little bit gullible and naive sometimes. Anyway, the mayor here wants to build some kind of a seawall thing, ostensibly to make a nice walking track, but there's already a dirt path there. And the whole community, is amazing how much of the community came out to protest this. And my understanding is that somebody called it the concrete mafia. There's like a whole thing about buying and selling concrete here. I'm sure there's a lot of money to be made on that. And then there's something else that, like, if they put that wall in there, then the land behind it gets designated differently, and then they can go ahead and develop that land where they can't develop it now, and there's a lot more money. So, but what really impressed me was how much of the community, and it was Puerto Ricans, it was gringos, it was everybody, was like, nope, we don't want this. We like our community the way it is. Corrupto Carlos, we're not gonna let you do this. So anyway, on March 29th, I've heard that there's going to be some protests at Tesla stores or Tesla factories or Tesla facilities coming up. And then on April 6th or 5th, there's some kind of protests due to in Washington and other places scheduled around all the upset people have with Donald Trump and Elon Musk. I think almost everybody who's not affiliated with the U.S. government is like, yeah, you need to fire a bunch of those people. We don't have any, we don't have any sympathy for government workers losing their jobs. But if you're a government worker, or your family is, or you're involved in Washington and all that, then you're deeply upset, right? So we got a little controversy going on. I'm wondering, all those illegal immigrants they put in place, when are they going to start playing that card and doing that game? I don't know. But that is definitely an indication of time. By the way, here in Puerto Rico, when they protest, they turn it into a big street party. It's very, very friendly. It's wonderful. There was music and food and drink and, you know, kids playing around and dogs, and it was a wonderful time. When the Puerto Ricans protest, they do it. That's how they do it. They they have a really good time, and I like being in a community like that. It could get very different in other situations. So we do see, and I'm seeing more angst like that happening, and things happening. Some of the bigger news I want to talk about is Cliff High. Bless him. I love Cliff. I've been following him for years. He's almost always got the general theme correct. Timing can be bitch, and almost anybody who's a good intuitive will tell you that, he would not consider himself an intuitive. He's using data analysis, but honestly he's a forecaster. And even the best of them, even the best of your best good astrologers or psychics or intuitives, they're really only going to be about 70% accurate. You can't, I mean, those are really good ones. I did some training with Joe McMoneagle for a while on remote viewing. Oh my God, if you ever get to spend any time, it was remote. I mean, I was doing it via Zoom. That guy has lived such an amazing life, and he's military trained. He was the guy that actually was portrayed in the movie Men Who Stare at Goats, which is all about the military psychic program. And yeah, he was really, really, really good. And military, they keep extremely accurate results and tracking and stuff. And Joe will tell you himself, like upper 60s was his percent hit rate. He tells a wonderful story of the guys all go to Vegas. Actually, that's kind of a thing, I'm like, I'm right on. I did some stuff with Joe Bamberger. Is that his name? On telekinesis, and he leads groups, and they go to Vegas, and they intentionally like doing things around craps tables and making money that way. Like, why not? It's fun. Yeah, so Joe was talking about. They go into Vegas, and he and a bunch of other remote viewers, and they're like some football game or something they're betting on, and there's a dozen of them, and Joe gets one, like Team A, and 11 of the others get Team B. And so they all go to place their bets, and Joe bets on Team B, and everybody else says, oh my God, Joe McMoneagle said A is going to win, so they all bet on A, and it turned out Team B won. And of course, Joe pockets all the money, and all the others are out, and they're like, why? And he goes, 11 of you guys picked the other one. I'm like, I'm not always accurate. So anyways, the Cliff's latest thing, let me not get distracted on that, although they're good stories. And do remind me to get back to about money and using psychic powers for money, because a lot of people think, oh, that's terrible, you shouldn't do that. And these guys have a very different take on it, and I really appreciate it. But so Cliff is saying, in his data, he is seeing that, I think it's like the June time frame, that there's going to be an awareness or an unfolding or an unveiling. We are in the apocalypse, it's all about unveiling, that vast more money, vast amounts more US dollars have been created than we've all known about, on the scale of 100 to 1,000 times, right? So I was mentioning this to my sister, and she was like, oh, everybody knows they've always been spending more money than they talk about. And then, Catherine Austin Fitts has been talking about that messing 22 trillion quite a few years. It might be more than that now. And I mean, it's funny now how, 22 trillion. What's 22 trillion? I go, it's 22 trillion. I'm like, with all this money flying around, couldn't a few million land in my account by accident? I mean, those are crumbs, right? Anyway. So, but Cliff is talking about like 100 times, 1,000 times. And now, when I get conspiracy theories, there's a lot of conspiracy theories, and I love them all. And I don't, I try to keep an open-minded, skeptical perspective on all of that. I got that phrase from Tom Campbell, and I've been reading Tom Campbell for quite a few years. He's the physicist, and I'm on his Patreon group, and there's like 50 of us, right? And then I guess Tom got on the Joe Rogan thing. He now has 1 million subscribers on Patreon. I'm like, damn, I need to get on the Joe Rogan show. How do you do that? Anyway, so Cliff is saying like that, and Cliff had a prompt, and I went ahead and did this, and I think I used ChatGPT. You can use any one of them. I've been playing around with different ones, DeepSeek, and there's a new one called Manus out, and I'm actually working with a guy to make a private AI that's off-grid, that's your own. But, put into the prompt, what are the consequences if it's suddenly discovered that there's 100 times more money that's ever been created than is discussed, or 1,000 times. And According to the AI, it makes a big difference as to whether it's 100 times or 1,000 times from my perspective. I don't think so. Uh, so it's okay. Aw, they're sweet. They're trying not to run me over. That's very nice. Cute little car too. Uh, and it's it's like, okay, well, there's going to be bank runs. There'll be people immediately going out and buying stuff. There'll be people diving into cryptos and gold and silver. They're going to like explode, and the whole thing. The credit system breaks down, supply chains break down. Governments have problems. Put the prompt into any one of your favorite AIs of, what would be the social and political. I also put in there what would be the consequences to life, like what kind of death rates might we see. And yeah, ChatGPT seemed to think about a 30% loss of life. I don't know. Anyway, one of the really hopeful things that Cliff is talking about, a lot of us are seeing that, thank goodness there is cryptos. And there's enough of us that have adopted cryptos, and there's enough of us that have bought precious metals. I hope you've bought some. I've been giving you tips on how to get ready for this for a long time. That, trade can get established, reestablished. It's not going to be nearly as devastating or complete collapse as it could be, because we've been having these other systems in place. So now with any thing you hear like that, you're like, okay, what do I do with this information, And I'm like, I'm like, okay. We do know the dollar collapse is going to happen one way or the other, right? And as Roy Rogers says, you go bankrupt slowly until it happens all at once. What's going to be the thing to trigger it? But I'm not necessarily believing it. And then a girlfriend of mine, so there's a group of us, not anything too formal or official, but each of us subscribes to different newsletters or follows different podcasters or whatever. We're all kind of keeping up with the news a little bit. And between the group of us, we can kind of keep up with the news. Like, the news is getting way out of control. Like, there's all kinds of things happening, right? So she forwarded me a thing. So I think Cliff might have been right. So this Doge group, Elon Musk comes out, this is just last week, he comes out with this thing that says, hey, yeah, we found 14 the magic money machines where it just creates money. There's no accountability, there's no anything, it just creates dollars. And there's 14 of these computers that the Doge team has found so far. And right now they're only talking about an extra trillion or two. Again, like, what's a trillion now these days? It doesn't mean anything, right? But the potential there, that's actually like, oh my God, here's a sign that's indicating something very similar to what Cliff is predicting, or it's a step in that direction. And Cliff put out another piece where he said, Doge has not yet gotten into the black budgets. And that might take them a little bit of work to do because they're black budgets. By the way, I haven't Cliff talking about this, but I did meet some folks in Acapulco that said they're pretty sure that the 4 Doge guys are actually AIs. I'm like, whatever, it doesn't really matter, does it? Probably be better if it's an AI than a real human being. So so when they start digging into that, and we all know that they've been creating just vast amounts of money, but when it really suddenly starts to dawn on people, it's kind of crazy. Like the whole, you saw the Kennedy release thing, which is a big nothing burger. And then the Epstein list was just more black ink than anybody can possibly imagine. And of course they can't release the Epstein list because, you know, everybody's on it, right? So I don't know. You know, we're living in this really, really crazy time. I think a lot of us all know who's on the Epstein. There's various versions of the Epstein list that are out there. It's just they're not like, uh, it's not like, okay, this is it, right? I don't know. But so apparently it's going to become to like a this is it moment with the money. And that will be, that, that's a potential that this could happen this summer. So that's why I thought I'd make this video for you. If you didn't have any other reason to prepare. So please, 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 silver is a way better investment than gold. I've really hit you up on that a lot. Please go buy some silver. Go down to a pawn shop. You know, if mom or grandma has some silver stuff and y'all were thinking of selling it off or not, you know, don't. Got a friend of mine who's like, oh, you know, I think somewhere one of my grandparents had a bunch, and he's gonna look into it. I'm like, you look into that and put it in a lockbox, and like that's really precious stuff. I've also given you a lot of change. Like when I go down and buy a coffee, I put a paper dollar, well, they're actually made of cotton now, the dollar in the jar, and I keep the change. Like I want those nickels and pennies and dimes. I think I told you before it costs 3.6 cents to make a penny now, and it's I think it's close to 15 cents to make a nickel. So yeah, yeah, and you know who knows what quarters and all that are worth, but they're worth something. And that is a pretty well-known thing through the many different times we have gone through hyperinflation and collapse, that the change becomes real valuable. It becomes a reasonable trade item. It's something people trust in. So I just wanted to riff for a minute on this Doge thing. Now, I honestly don't totally get this Doge thing. I mean, it's pretty amazing that it's happening. And that is really surprising to me. Jeff Berwick says, well, they got to give you something. You know, they've basically, Trump is basically a Zionist and put in a whole Zionist cabinet, and it's all basically the same stuff it's always been. And so they got to give you something. And so, you know, they're doing Doge, and that's going to be the thing that we're all going to get. I don't know. I don't know. I was watching an interview. I don't know the name of the guy. Somebody, this is one of those 5-minute things where he was one of the beginning persons to create the whole Doge thing. And he was saying he was sitting down with Elon, and they're like, hey, we're going to do this Doge thing. And Elon's like, well, we have however many millions of employees in the government, but apparently there's only about like 460,000 of them that are considered critical. And Elon was like, we need to get rid of 80% of all the government employees. And this guy was going, well, look, I know an easy and totally legal way that we could do 50% right now. And apparently he and Elon were going back and forth. It's like, Elon's like, I want 80. And he's like, no, I can do 50, 80, 50, whatever. Bottom line is we are going to see more, millions and millions more jobs laid off from the government. And of course that has, you know, big spillover effects for everybody, honestly. Saw something that the Kentucky Fed downgraded the expectations for the economic growth from it was like plus whatever it was, 2 or 3%, now to negative 2 or 3%. It was a huge drop. It wasn't small, like, oh, okay, we're going to start like maybe indicating the truth here, huh? We've actually been in recession for quite a few years, right? And that's the definition of recession, if you have negative GDP growth for 2 quarters. So they didn't want to admit that, so they jack up the numbers. Anyway, yeah, I don't know about Doge, and I don't know what's going on with that. Now, Bix Weir, another very hopeful thing, Bix Weir has his Roto-Rooter theory, and I love Bix. He is saying that this whole thing has been planned for a long, long time, that there's way more gold than has ever been talked about, and in fact, that's why the Federal Reserve was created in 1913. was because of the amount of gold that was found then would have just completely blown up the whole world at that point in time, and they decided to delay it. And the strategy has been to print as much money as we print to infinity, and build your roads, your bridges, your houses, build all your stuff with this useless money until you can't anymore, and then go back to a gold-backed currency. And it sure looks like, well, that's definitely what they've been doing. Sarah Westall also recently had an interview where some insider is talking about, Trump is planning on setting up a gold-backed dollar, and that is apparently slated for July of 2026. So, I don't know. Anyway, there's your conspiracy theory summary update. The bottom line is you need to be prepping. So I've been eating a lot of my own food, eating down the freezers full of meat and butter over the last year or so. Everything's been a little hard. I got out of US dollars, right? I got out, and I just barely am living the minimum. I'm living in an expensive house and just keeping a really, really low profile. I've got most of my resources into, really it's pretty simple. I've been talking to you about it, the Theta token, cryptocurrency, and then silver. And you don't really need a lot, honestly. I don't really need a lot to live. And yeah, I'm just hunkered down and mostly enjoying life and doing what I can to help people, and watching this whole thing go down and doing what I can to help people transition into this thing. But I'm starting to go, oh my God! So I ate down a lot of the food in my freezers, and I'm actually going, I'm going to start filling them back up again. Because I think we're getting real close to this. For those of you doing your backup storage stuff, I know Ruth just recently created a really excellent piece on starting to build up a backup food supply. It's available at the Grow Network. I'll see if I can get you a link and put it down there. I'll also get the link. I really recommend John Bush's class, Cryptos for Beginners. If you don't know anything about cryptos, it's where I learned most of my crypto stuff. But I've mentioned it a few times before. If you're building up a backup food supply, I really recommend small freezers. They're like 7 cubic feet, 5 cubic, the littler ones, not tiny but little. And I have actually 3 of them. 2 of them are empty right now. And that way, I just put a bunch in one, and then put a bunch in another one and eat off the other. I can never manage all those dates and stuff. God bless those women who can actually keep track of all that. That's not me. I just fill up one and then fill up another. And I'm going to start filling it up. And the most valuable macronutrients that you can store are fats, number 1, and then protein, number 2. So fat is the most difficult thing to produce in a backyard size space, and protein is the next most difficult. Carbohydrates are readily available, and then, oh my goodness, we've got, there's all kinds of leafy greens everywhere. So lots of fiber everywhere. And I like those little ones because they make them super energy efficient now. And then you can get a little solar panel or something to run them. If you happen to end up in a grid down situation. And when mine starts getting kind of lean like it is now, I go ahead and fill them up with like gallons of water so that it has ballast, so it has frozen ballast. So that way, I shouldn't say if the electricity, here in Puerto Rico, it's, you need to slow down, is when the electricity goes out. There's enough ballast in there that it's going to be fine for a couple of days. So there you have it. So Cliff is thinking that's going to happen this summer. We definitely have a lot of things moving along. If you want to join a really fun protest, come here to Puerto Rico. But otherwise, I think I'd stay away from those other ones on the mainland. They are looking kind of nasty. I saw one in Israel. Man, basically the people are really done with Netanyahu, man. The people are really done with him, which, thank God, right? So it's looking a little dicey out there. Definitely prepare. And yeah, I've got a couple of big announcements I'm going to be making sometimes in the next few days. So I've been working on some projects, and all right. Well, we'll talk to you then. I trust you're doing really well, and buckle up and get ready. Take a deep breath, meditate. I will talk to you later.